James, thank you very much for joining. Obviously, we're ex-colleagues, and I know that you've been in the industry for many years, and you are based in the US of A. Obviously, you're a director of the risk advisory for SAI Global over in the States. You're in the UK often. You're a member of BCI, and I was with you at BCI World at the last event. And I believe you were named BCI Continuity and Resilience Consultant of America recently. So congratulations.
That's correct. Yes, thank you. It's nice. It's good to see you again, Lee. It's been a while.
No, it's been too long. But as the Americans would say, that would mean world champion, right? So
exactly. In my head. World champion. In my head, yes, of course, obviously.
But you work primarily in financial services, and you've been involved in risk events across the globe. I know we spoke about you're involved in like the Egyptian unrest, and also Pacific Rim with the tornadoes and typhoons as well. You've been working on projects that have been dealing with those hitting, and it's great to have you this evening. And I will hand over to you. And I know you've got some interesting areas around whether or not this will just impact us on a checkbox, or are the board going to actually take this to heart and actually embrace it? So I will turn off and over to you.
All right, thank you, Lee. It's good to see everyone. I see some people that I know and have met before. Charles, Terry, it's great to see a lot of you. Lee is telling me I have -5 minutes to speak. So I just want to focus on one thing that Michael talked about, that disconnect between business continuity and resilience, and how he's never understood why there's a disconnect. So I want to kind of twist that around and look from my area as a business continuity person looking into the world of risk, what happens when there is a disconnect. And we'll just kind of slice this through the lens of COVID-19. I think as a business continuity guy, I'm legally obligated to say COVID-19 at least 7 times an hour whenever I talk, so I think I have 5 left. But pre-COVID-19, a lot of business continuity was very much a check the box mentality, right? You have organizations that do BIAs, you have organizations that do quote unquote risk assessments, they create plans, and they have these beautiful documents and binders and risk registers and the beloved, Michael, your beloved heat map. If I could ever explain risk to a board of directors without sparkly numbers or colors, I would love to. But you create all this documentation, right? You create all these projects. And what's the problem with that is you don't have a program. And when you have that disconnect, you're not really mitigating risk. And over time, management does not see value in the business continuity program. The spotlight is diminished, the funding is diminished. And like Sandra talked about earlier, maybe where business continuity or risk fits in a management hierarchy moves down. And this is not resilience at all. This is how resilience and business continuity disconnect. BC documentation does not make your organization resilient. So what's happened during COVID-19? I think I have 3 left. What have we seen in our world? So business continuity went from a hypothetical, you're talking to management, hey, we should do this, hey, we have risk, are we going to mitigate them, accept them, to an actual. Every company in the world is experiencing some type of change in their business, good or bad, because of what's happening right now with a global pandemic. And companies are immediately finding their top line revenue is affected, right? Their income is affected. For a lot of companies, their market share has been impacted. Their client confidence has been impacted. And certainly we've seen a lot of management, their opinion of their risk personnel has been dramatically impacted. And Terrence Lee is on the call, and he always says that a disaster becomes, in the US, we call it a resume generating event. Here for the Supper Club, we will call it a CV generating event. And we are seeing lots of people getting displaced in my profession, not just because of short-sighted redundancies, but because companies have lost faith in their management teams and their risk management teams. So why did so many risk professionals miss this? Michael and I actually had a good chat on LinkedIn a couple of weeks ago because I was calling this a black swan event. And he pointed out, no, this is, like he said, this is a known pandemic, has been a concern. It's been on everyone's radar who's been mindful. We just chose to neglect it. I even had a quick chat with the gentleman who wrote the Black Swan book, and he said, no, this is clearly not a black swan. So why did we miss this? And the reason is that most risk professionals, when you uncouple business continuity and resilience, what do we always focus on? We focus on what just happened. We are great at making sure what happened last month won't happen again. But this isn't resilience, right? Look at COVID-19, look at in the Southeast United States, Hurricane Katrina, look at the Australian wildfires, the 2008 global recession. There is always another unknown coming. And when we just focus on what immediately happened, are we mitigating risk? No. Are we creating resilience in our organization? We're not. So does management see value in what we're doing? No. It becomes more of check the box. So in future state going forward, we expect two things to happen, and we're already starting to see them now. First, there are going to be a lot of companies that have very aggressive deadlines. I've talked to several companies this week where they said, we want to be resilient by December 31st because we never want to have another COVID-19 happen again. We want to have business continuity by the end of the third quarter because we never want this to happen again. But what happens when you have to build a program in a short amount of time? It becomes more check the box, right? So we understand management pressure. We understand having to meet deadlines, audit requirements. We're seeing a ton of, I've participated in more board meetings in the last month and a half than I have in the last 2 years. Everybody wants to talk about this. They want to remediate it. But you want to be mindful that by doing it quickly, one is probably not the right way to do it. Michael talked about there's good tools and bad tools and processes depending on what you're trying to do. And two, you're not creating resilience. The world is changing. Companies, businesses are changing. I saw 2 days ago, Brussels Airlines, their subsidiary of Lufthansa, they announced their restructuring program includes dropping unprofitable routes, planes, redundancies. And I thought what was most interesting about their statement was they do not plan for their business to be back to business as usual until 2023. So they are already looking 3 years out. They're not sprinting to a December 31st end of third quarter mandate, end of fourth quarter mandate. They're looking at what do we need to do so that the next time there's a bump in the night, it doesn't catastrophically shut down our business. So what we're encouraging a lot of risk professionals to do right now, you have that management spotlight. We are all in our 15 minutes of fame, so use it. Certainly meet management objectives, but let's start to do some things. Let's do some activities to actually mitigate risk. If we just document risk and we create plans and we immediately focus on COVID-19 and pandemics, we're not prepared for what's coming next. So we want you to use this time, complete management objectives, certainly look at the short-term hurdles, but what are the things that you can put into place to create more of a risk program and not a risk project, not a risk document? What are the things you can do to truly mitigate risk, to truly make your organizations resilient? You have a great opportunity right now to help your company sustain and grow their business. I think a lot of people are starting to see how a risk professional can help the business grow, not just from a compliance standpoint of what you can't do, but here's how we protect the business. Here's how we take positive type risk to grow going forward.
Brilliant.
Lee, I will flip it back to you.
Well, yeah, no, I completely forgot. Actually, we had a poll for Michael and for you, so I'm going to run it now while I ask it a question. I'm going to actually bring in Neil Patrick. Said he's okay to go on video. He's obviously not in his pajamas and he's combed his hair. But while we're doing that, I'll run your poll quickly. And the question for your poll should be on the screens now. So if anyone can, or all of you can answer that, that'd be fantastic. And I'll run Michael's when we do the panel session in a second.
So it'll be interesting to see people's thoughts on this.
I think 50% of people have voted so far, and there's a good spread actually across 3 of them.
Okay.
In the next 6 months, will your organization invest in resilience?
And this seems kind of like a silly question, Lee, right? But I wanted to ask this because we asked this as part of our business continuity benchmark survey. We asked people this before in January, and we asked them this question in the last 3 weeks. And so we'll wait to see what people say here, and I'll share with the Supper Club what we're seeing on this globally.
No problem. And I think somebody mentioned they couldn't see the poll. I'll share this and all questions as well with answers. So if I haven't got to your question, or we haven't got to your questions yet, I'll do my best to go through some on the panel, but also we'll collate them all with answers, and I'll send them out as part of the collateral afterwards with the the poll results as well. So we've got about 62% of people have voted. So I'm going to close that now just so you can share the results and you can see them.
Yeah, so this is what we're seeing, Lee, with a lot of organizations. Certainly you would think the obvious answer is increase, but that not sure bracket has been 30 to 50% of every poll that I've done with this question. And it shows you how organizations are in such flux right now and such a mode of crisis that they're not even sure how to move forward. So it's surprising, but it is something that I have seen several times over the last few weeks.
Brilliant. Well, actually, Neil's appeared. I didn't even have to click it, so that's good. So Neil, you had a question for us. It looks like you're on a beach somewhere. It's very sunny behind you. But no, can you ask your question? That'd be great. Oh, we can't hear you though. I've not got you on mute, so no, we can't hear you. If you can't, I can ask it if need be. We can see you, but we can't hear you, Neil. Oh, it's like a countdown. Okay, so we'll have to end that one. So I will ask the question for you. So basically, Neil was saying, I don't particularly like the heat maps for reporting relative risk significance, but what is a better format? Should it be different for SMEs assessing risk and for board members managing it? And then he said at the end, happy to video. Well, he did video, we just couldn't hear him.
Yeah, and I'm sure Michael will chime in on this later too, but certainly us as risk professionals, I think about risk all day, every day, right? So I would expect the models that I and my team are using are going to be much more complex than when Lee, you and I get in front of the board audit committee and they allocate 15 minutes a year to risk, which one is too short of amount of time. You have to share your whole risk world and everything you've done the last 365 days into that very short amount of time. And I think that's why people default to the heat map and they just immediately look, if it's up in the corner in red, that's bad. We should talk about it and we should ignore everything else. The problem with that is a lot of boards don't understand the methodology that went into those risk ratings. And when you shortcut, for me, when you shortcut the methodology of, good, bad, ugly, green, yellow, red, pick any spectrum you want, and you share that with someone, how do they really know what's important? So I think the heat map is just a default that everyone uses because they're familiar with it, boards are familiar with it, but I don't think it really explains to an organization, here's where your real risks are, and especially your emerging risk, where they're coming from.
Perfect. Thank you, James.